Ethan Cole stood in the docking bay of the small human transport ship. His uniform was clean, his boots polished, and his posture straight. But inside he felt a knot in his stomach. He had been given an unusual duty by the Earth Council. He was to host an alien ambassador on his ship and make sure she reached the central station safely. For a young officer like him, it was a rare honor, but also a heavy responsibility. The ship was not large. It had been designed for short travel between colonies, not for hosting special guests. Still, orders were orders, and Ethan would do his best. He looked at the timer on the wall. The alien guest would arrive any moment now. He had read her name in the mission file, Serenia, a representative of a people called the Illyrians. Ethan had heard rumors about the Illyrians before. Some said they were secretive and distant, keeping to themselves in their shining star cities. Others claimed they had strange powers, able to sense feelings or even glimpse the future. What he knew for certain was that no human had ever spent much time alone with one. And now, here he was, about to host one in the close quarters of his ship. The bay doors opened with a soft hiss and a small craft slid smoothly inside. It looked different from human ships, almost alive, as if its metal had grown instead of being built. The craft opened, and a tall figure stepped out. Serenia moved gracefully, her silver-blue robes flowing like water. Her skin had a faint glow, as if starlight lived beneath it, and her eyes were calm and deep, the kind of eyes that seemed to notice everything. She was not frightening, but her presence filled the bay with a quiet weight, like standing beneath the night sky. Ethan stepped forward quickly, forcing a polite smile. "Ambassador Serenia," he said, his voice steady even though his palms were sweating. "Welcome aboard. I am Ethan Cole, your escort to the central station." Serenia looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable, then inclined, her head slightly. "Thank you, Ethan Cole. I trust this journey will be enlightening." Her voice was soft and musical, but it carried a firmness that made Ethan feel as though she already knew more about him than he had spoken. "Of course," he replied. "If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your quarters." He led her through the narrow hallways of the ship. The corridors were clean but plain, with white walls and dim lighting. He felt suddenly self-conscious, realizing how simple and ordinary everything must look to someone from a great alien civilization. They reached the cabin assigned to her. Ethan stopped in front of the sliding door, cleared his throat, and turned to face her. "I should explain something before you step inside," he said, his words stumbling out faster than he meant them to. "This ship was not built for hosting important guests. It has very limited space. The cabin is modest." Serenia watched him calmly, waiting. Ethan pressed the panel and the door slid open. Inside was a small room with smooth walls, a single table and one bed against the side. The bed was not large, just enough for one person. Ethan felt his face grow warm as he hurried to explain. "My room has just one bed," he said quickly. "I'm afraid this is all we have for a guest space. I'll find somewhere else to rest. Please don't worry about me." There was a short silence. Ethan wished the floor would swallow him whole. But then Serenia stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room slowly, as if she was studying not just the walls and furniture, but the meaning behind them. Finally, she looked back at him. "That's perfect," she answered quietly. Her words surprised him so much that he blinked. He had expected displeasure, or at least a request for something better. Instead, she seemed at peace. Ethan tried to speak but found no words. Serenia set her small silver case on the table and turned back to him. "You are kind to be concerned, but comfort does not depend on many beds or wide rooms. It depends on purpose, and we are here for a purpose." He nodded awkwardly. "Right, of course. If there's anything you need, just ask. I'll make sure you are taken care of." She gave him a faint smile, not wide but enough to soften the sharpness of her presence. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, as if she had already decided it was fine. Ethan excused himself and left the cabin, his heart still beating fast. As he walked back to the control room, he replayed her words in his mind. That's perfect. What had she meant? The journey began soon after. The ship lifted from the docking bay, and slipped into the black sea of space. Ethan sat at the controls, watching the stars stretch into lines as they entered faster than light travel. Behind him, he felt Serenya's quiet presence. She had chosen not to stay in her cabin but instead stood near the control room window, gazing at the stars. Ethan tried not to stare, but it was difficult. There was something about her silence, the way she seemed to listen to the universe itself, that made the small ship feel less empty. Hours passed. They spoke only a little at first. Serenya asked about Earth, about its oceans and forests. Ethan told her about the blue skies and the warm sun, about mountains covered in snow and cities, alive with energy. He found himself speaking with pride, realizing how much he loved the world he called home. In return, Serenya spoke of Illyria, her people's star city, where towers shone like crystal and gardens floated between them. She said her people valued harmony, and that every voice, no matter how soft, was part of the great song of their civilization. Ethan listened closely. Her words painted pictures in his mind of a world so different, yet strangely familiar in its beauty. As the first day of their journey ended, Ethan offered again to sleep in the control room so she could have privacy. Serenya looked at him quietly and said, "Do not trouble yourself. The room is enough. We share the same sky outside, do we not? That is space enough." Ethan laughed softly, his nervousness fading for the first time. "I suppose that's true." That night, as he rested in the pilot's chair, he thought about how unusual this mission was turning out to be. He had expected formality, distance, and duty. Instead, he felt as if he were standing at the edge of something unknown, something far greater than a simple escort task. The stars moved silently outside the window, and in the quiet hum of the ship, Ethan Cole realized that this journey with the alien woman might change him more than he could imagine. And it had only just begun. The next morning, the small transport ship glided through the quiet vastness of space. The stars outside seemed endless, a glittering ocean of light stretching in every direction. Ethan Cole sat at the control console, his hands moving over the instruments with precision, though his mind wandered frequently toward the alien ambassador, who now shared his journey. Serenya remained in her cabin for a while, but soon she emerged, moving with her usual quiet grace. She did not speak immediately, simply observing the ship, its walls, and its soft hum of life support systems. Her eyes, deep and reflective, seemed to drink in every detail, noting things a human would not even notice. Ethan took a deep breath and forced himself to speak. "Ambassador, I hope you slept well." Serenya turned toward him. Her eyes glimmered faintly under the cabin lights. "Sleep was sufficient, but I was awake for much of it, listening." Ethan tilted his head, confused. "Listening. The vibrations of this ship," she explained softly. "Even in stillness it speaks. The pulse of energy, the movement of systems, all of it tells a story. You humans rarely notice these details, but they are part of life, and life should always be observed." Ethan swallowed, impressed by her words. He realized he had spent much of his life focused only on immediate tasks, rarely pausing to truly notice the world around him. Somehow this alien woman had already reminded him of something he had forgotten. He gestured toward a window. "If you like, you can look out here. The stars are, well, I think they are beautiful, but words cannot do them justice." Serenya moved closer and rested her hands lightly on the glass. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your people dream of the stars. I can feel it. Not just the desire to travel, but the yearning to understand, to belong. This is rare." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. Her words were accurate in ways that surprised him. He realized that she did not merely observe the stars, she observed humans too. She could see not only their actions, but their hidden motivations, hopes, and fears. "I suppose," he said slowly, "that humans have always wanted more than just to survive. We want to explore, to know what is beyond, to leave something lasting." But most people get lost in the daily struggle and forget the larger purpose. Serenia nodded. Yes, struggle is universal, but purpose is what defines a species. Humans are young, yet your spirit is strong. It is impressive. Ethan laughed softly. The sound echoed lightly in the small cabin, and he felt a warmth spread in his chest. He had expected formality, rigid rules, and polite conversation. Instead, he found himself speaking openly, sharing thoughts he had never expressed to anyone else. "Tell me about your people," he said after a pause. "I know Illyrians are different, but what is it like to live among your kind?" Serenia's eyes softened as she answered. "Illyrians value harmony. Every action, every word, every thought is considered in relation to others. We have long lives and long memories. Conflict is rare because we understand the cost of disruption. Yet we are not without curiosity. That is why I am here, with you. To learn." Ethan leaned back, surprised. "To learn about humans?" She inclined her head. "Yes, many of my arid yore." The vast blackness of space seemed peaceful at first. Stars glittered like distant lanterns, and the soft hum of the ship's engines was the only sound inside the small cabin. Ethan Cole sat at the control console, scanning the navigation instruments. He had grown more comfortable with Serenia's presence over the past 2 days, though a part of him still marveled at her calmness and composure. Serenia stood near the window, her hands lightly resting on the glass. She observed the distant stars, but Ethan noticed her attention was also on the subtle shifts in the ship's energy. She did not speak for a long time, but her presence was reassuring. Suddenly, the warning lights on the control panel blinked red. Ethan's heart jumped. "Magnetic storm detected," he muttered to himself, leaning closer to the instruments. The ship's course sensors were showing rapid fluctuations. "This region is unpredictable. We could be tossed off course or worse." Serenia stepped forward. "I can sense it," she said quietly. "The storm is not just outside. It resonates within the ship's core. You must adjust the stabilizers immediately." Ethan's hands moved quickly over the controls, his training taking over. I know, I'm trying." But the storm's energy was stronger than anything he had encountered before. The ship rocked violently, throwing him against the console. Alarms blared and the lights flickered. Serenia reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. The touch was light, but Ethan felt a strange calm wash over him. "Focus, Ethan. Do not fight the storm directly. Flow with it. Use its energy." Her words were strange, almost poetic, but Ethan had learned to trust her instincts. He adjusted the controls as she instructed, redirecting the energy through the ship's shields instead of resisting it. Slowly, the violent shaking lessened and the alarms dimmed. They were not out of danger yet. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. "That was close," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I've never seen anything like this." Serenia's expression remained calm. "This is only the beginning. Space has many tests. It is not enough to survive. One must adapt and understand." Ethan nodded. He realized that her people did not simply react. They observed, anticipated, and adjusted. And in that moment, he knew that relying on her guidance might save their lives. The storm continued to rage around them, but Ethan and Serenia worked together seamlessly. She guided him with her calm instructions, and he executed them with precision. For the first time, Ethan felt the strange exhilaration of facing danger alongside someone who could sense the world in ways he could not. Hours passed, and the storm slowly began to subside. The ship had sustained minor damage, but nothing critical. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding him. He looked at Serenia, who stood quietly, her gaze still fixed on the stars. "You were amazing," he said finally. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Serenia shook her head slightly. "You would have found a way, as humans always do. I only helped you see what was already possible. Courage exists within you, even when you doubt it." Ethan smiled faintly. "I guess that's why humans survive so often. We keep going, even when it seems impossible." Serenia's eyes softened. "Yes, But survival is not enough. Life is about learning, understanding, and connection. Today you learn to trust not only yourself, but also another being. That is important. Ethan realized she was right. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, he felt a bond forming that went beyond simple companionship. They had faced danger together, relying on each other's strengths, and come through stronger. As the ship drifted through calmer space, Ethan began inspecting the systems for damage. He moved from console to console, checking shields, engines, and life support. Serenia followed him quietly, occasionally placing a hand on a panel and whispering notes. Though he did not understand her words, he noticed subtle changes in the instruments after her touch. "You have unusual abilities," he said, curiosity breaking through his fatigue. "You can sense things I can't even see." Serenia looked at him and smiled faintly. "We do not see the same way. We perceive energy, patterns, and intention. It is not magic, as some humans might say. It is simply observation combined with understanding." Ethan shook his head in amazement. "Observation and understanding. I think humans could learn a lot from that." The hours passed, and the ship moved deeper into the unknown. Ethan and Serenia spoke quietly of human and Illyrian navigation techniques, of star maps and instinctive guidance. Despite the danger they had faced, a sense of calm confidence settled over them. They were not just surviving, they were learning, adapting, and growing together. As night approached, Ethan returned to the small cabin to rest. Serenia had already settled near the bed, sitting quietly and observing the stars outside. He paused for a moment, realizing how strange it was to feel comfortable in such close quarters with an alien being. Yet, the storm had shown him that trust and cooperation were stronger than fear. "Thank you for staying close," he said quietly. "I might have panicked if you weren't here." Serenia looked at him with her calm, piercing eyes. "Fear is natural. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. You chose courage today, Ethan. That is why you are here." Ethan felt a warmth rise in his chest. Her words were not just comforting, they were inspiring. He realized that she had a way of seeing the best in him, even when he doubted himself. "Do you ever feel fear?" he asked, curious. Serenia tilted her head thoughtfully. "Yes. We feel it in different ways, but fear is a signal, not a limit. It guides us to act wisely. It reminds us that life is precious. And today, fear was a teacher for both of us." Ethan nodded slowly. "I never thought of it that way." They fell into a quiet silence, the hum of the ship and the faint pulse of distant stars filling the room. For the first time, Ethan felt that he was not alone in the vast emptiness of space. There was someone beside him who understood, not just the mechanics of the journey, but the meaning behind it. The next day, as the ship continued its course, Ethan and Serenia worked on repairs. The storm had left minor damage to the hull and navigation systems. Ethan directed the work while Serenia offered guidance and insight. Together, they solved problems faster than either could alone. During a brief break, Ethan looked at Serenia and asked, "Do your people ever visit other civilizations like this?" Serenia considered the question. "Rarely. We prefer observation from afar. Interaction carries risk. Yet, when understanding is necessary, we must engage. Humans are unusual. You do not always act with logic, but your hearts are often strong. That is rare in the universe." Ethan smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Serenia's eyes glimmered faintly. "It is meant as one." As the day ended, Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. The storm had been a test, not just of skill, but of trust, patience, and partnership. He had learned that working with Serenia required more than following instructions. It required listening, observing, and understanding in ways he had never imagined. That night, as they settled near the small bed in the cabin, Ethan looked at Serenia and felt a sense of calm. The storm had passed, the danger had been met, and they had survived together. More than that, they had learned from each other, growing closer with every shared challenge. "You know," he said quietly, "I never thought a tiny ship like this could feel like a home, but somehow with you here it does." Serenya's lips curved into a faint smile. "Perhaps it is not the ship that feels like home, Ethan. Perhaps it is the presence of trust, courage, and understanding. That is what creates a home." Ethan nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He had faced storms, uncertainty, and fear, yet he felt stronger than ever. With Serenya beside him, the universe did not seem so vast and empty. Instead, it seemed full of possibilities, waiting to be explored together. As the stars stretched endlessly outside their window, Ethan and Serenya prepared to rest. The journey ahead would be long and challenging, but they had discovered a strength in each other, a quiet, unspoken bond that would guide them through whatever lay ahead. And so, with the hum of the ship and the distant glitter of stars, human and Illyrian settled into the night, ready to face the unknown together. The ship glided quietly through space, the hum of the engines a constant companion. Ethan Cole had grown accustomed to the rhythm of life aboard the small transport. Yet with Serenya by his side, every moment felt charged with a strange curiosity and quiet intensity. They had survived the first storm together, and now, in the calm, they found time to reflect and understand each other more deeply. Ethan had taken to walking the narrow corridors, checking systems, and talking with Serenya whenever she appeared outside her cabin. She often lingered near the observation window, watching distant stars and nebulae drift by. It fascinated him how her attention could shift between the vastness of space and the intricate details of their small ship with equal ease. One afternoon, Ethan found Serenya seated near the control console, her silver-blue robes catching the soft glow of the instruments. She was quietly examining a schematic of the ship's navigation systems, tracing lines with delicate fingers. "You understand this ship very quickly," he said, leaning against the wall. "I've only shown you the basics, yet you seem to know how everything works." Serenya looked up and smiled faintly. "Understanding is more than seeing. It is feeling the patterns, sensing the relationships between parts, and predicting the outcomes of actions. Humans." The quiet of space was deceptive. The small ship glided smoothly, but Ethan Cole could sense tension in the air. He had grown used to the hum of the engines, the distant glitter of stars, and the calm presence of Serenya. Yet, despite the apparent safety, his instincts whispered that danger could arrive at any moment. Serenya stood at the observation window, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Something approaches," she said softly, her voice calm but serious. Ethan leaned over the console, checking the sensors. The blips on the display made his stomach tighten. "It's a small fleet," he muttered. "Not native to this region. Hostile, I think." Serenya nodded. "Yes. They carry no signs of diplomacy. Prepare yourself, Ethan. We must act, but not recklessly." Ethan swallowed hard. He had faced challenges before, but never like this. His hands moved over the controls, checking shields, engines, and weapon systems. Serenya's presence beside him was steadying. He knew that panicking would be fatal. The fleet of unknown ships appeared on the radar, closing in quickly. Ethan adjusted their course, trying to find a route that would minimize exposure. "We could try to outrun them," he said, "but I don't think our ship is fast enough for a straight escape." Serenya placed a hand on the console, her fingers brushing lightly against the controls. Ethan noticed that the instruments seemed to respond subtly to her touch. "Rushing will lead to destruction," she said. "We must outsmart them. Humans rely too much on force. We will use strategy." Ethan nodded, trusting her judgment. "All right. What's the plan?" Serenya gestured toward the approaching ships. "Observe their pattern. They are confident but predictable. They expect fear and reaction, not calculation. We will create a false opening, lure them into the storm sector we recently passed. Then we will trap them using the turbulence and our shields." Ethan felt a surge of respect. She was not just an observer, she was a strategist. He adjusted the ship's systems as she instructed, preparing to turn the storm into an advantage. The enemy ships moved closer, unaware of the trap awaiting them. Minutes felt like hours as they maneuvered through space. Ethan executed each command with precision, relying on Serenya's guidance. Her calm voice and steady hands helped him maintain focus even as the enemy drew nearer. "Now," Serenya said quietly, "engage the sequence." Ethan activated the sequence, and the ship's shields shimmered with energy, creating a visual and sensor distortion. The enemy fleet followed blindly, expecting an easy capture. But as they entered the storm sector, turbulence and electromagnetic pulses disrupted their formations. Ships collided or spun out of control. Ethan's hands shook slightly with relief, but he could not celebrate yet. One small enemy vessel broke free and charged toward them, weapons glowing. "They're not done yet," he shouted. Serenya remained calm. "Focus on one at a time. We have the advantage now." Working together, they managed to divert the attacking vessel using calculated maneuvers, leading it into the path of the storm's turbulence. The ship spun harmlessly away, forced to retreat. Ethan exhaled, a sense of awe mixed with exhaustion flooding him. "Good work," he said, his voice still shaky. "I don't know how we did it." Serenya smiled faintly. "We did not rely solely on strength. We relied on observation, calculation, and trust. That is how life endures." Ethan nodded, realizing how much he had learned in just a few days. The storm, the approach of the hostile fleet, and Serenya's guidance had all taught him the value of patience, strategy, and partnership. As the danger passed, Ethan checked the ship for damage. There were minor scrapes on the hull and slight interference with the navigation systems, but nothing critical. Serenya assisted him quietly, her hands moving over panels and instruments, adjusting subtle energy flows that seemed to enhance the ship's stability. "You are remarkable," Ethan said softly. "I never imagined anyone could handle a crisis like that so calmly." Serenya looked at him, her expression serene. "Calmness is not absence of concern. It is control over it. Fear exists to guide, not to paralyze. Today you learned that. You acted with courage." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. Her words were not only praise but insight. He had always thought courage was about facing danger alone. Now he understood that courage also meant trusting others, working together, and using one's mind as well as strength. Later, as the ship returned to a calmer sector of space, Ethan and Serenya found a moment to rest. The small cabin, once merely a place to sleep, now felt like a sanctuary. They shared quiet words about the crisis, reflecting on what they had learned and how they had survived together. "You never faltered," Ethan said. "Even when the ships were close, you remained calm. How do you do that?" Serenya looked at him with thoughtful eyes. "Experience, observation, and acceptance. I know that fear exists. I know that danger exists. I also know that panic serves no purpose. Focus, calculation, and trust. These are stronger than fear." Ethan nodded, slowly. I think I understand now. I was afraid, but I listened, and together we made it through." Serenya inclined her head. "Yes, together. That is the lesson." The night aboard the ship was quiet, but neither of them truly rested. Ethan's mind raced with thoughts of the enemy fleet, the storm, and the vastness of space. Yet a sense of reassurance lingered because he knew Serenya was near. Her calm presence reminded him that even in the face of uncertainty, there was guidance, support, and shared purpose. The next day, they worked on repairing the minor damages from the encounter. Ethan learned more about the ship's systems under Serenya's careful instruction. She showed him ways to anticipate fluctuations in energy, optimize navigation, and maintain stability in unpredictable conditions. "You have adapted quickly," Serenya said as Ethan adjusted the shield controls. "Humans are remarkable when they choose to learn. You listened, observed, and acted with precision. That is why you survived." Ethan felt a deep respect for her. Not only had she guided him through a life-threatening crisis, but she had also taught him to trust in his own abilities and judgment. He realized that the journey was no longer just about getting her safely to the central station. It was about growth, understanding, and partnership. That evening, Ethan and Serenia returned to the small cabin. The single bed that had once caused him embarrassment now felt like a symbol of shared trust and closeness. Serenia sat quietly by the window, gazing at the stars, and Ethan realized that he no longer felt nervous about their proximity. Today was intense, Ethan said softly. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it. And yet, I feel stronger. Serenia looked at him with calm eyes. Strength is not always measured by the absence of danger. It is measured by the ability to act wisely in the presence of it. Today, you demonstrated strength, courage, and trust. That is more important than victory alone. Ethan nodded, absorbing her words. He realized that the crisis had changed him. He had faced fear, relied on another being, and discovered the value of teamwork, strategy, and understanding. He had learned that courage was not solitary, it was shared. As the stars stretched endlessly outside the ship, Ethan and Serenia settled into a quiet rhythm. The crisis had tested them, but it had also strengthened their bond. They had survived together, learned from each other, and discovered that even in the darkest corners of space, partnership and trust could light the way forward. Ethan glanced at Serenia, who watched the glittering expanse with serene focus. He felt gratitude, admiration, and a sense of wonder. The journey ahead was still long and uncertain, but for the first time he felt confident that together they could face whatever challenges awaited. And so, human and Illyrian continued their journey, stronger, wiser, and closer than ever. They had faced the first great crisis and emerged not only unscathed, but united in purpose, courage, and understanding. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of promise, mystery, and the quiet hope of discovery. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, a glittering canvas that reminded Ethan of the vastness of space and the smallness of his own ship. Yet, after all they had faced, the journey no longer seemed frightening. He had learned courage, patience, and trust. Most importantly, he had discovered that even in the most unexpected places, connection could flourish. Serenia sat quietly near the EIGO observation window, her eyes reflecting the swirling constellations. Ethan watched her for a moment, taking in the calm grace she carried even after the chaos of their recent encounter. You were incredible, he said softly. I don't think I would have survived without you guiding me. Serenia turned, her expression serene. And yet, you acted bravely, Ethan. You applied what you learned, adapted to the situation, and made decisions that saved us both. Courage is not only about acting first, it is about acting wisely. Ethan smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. I never thought I could handle something like that. I was so afraid. Fear is natural, Serenia replied. It is a guide. But trust, knowledge, and partnership transform fear into strength. Today you proved that humans are capable of remarkable resilience. That is why I said the one bed was perfect, not because of its size, but because it symbolizes unity and trust. Ethan's heart quickened. He remembered that first awkward moment, the small cabin, the tiny bed, and how unsure he had felt. Now, it felt different. The close quarters no longer caused embarrassment. They represented the shared journey, the challenges overcome, and the trust earned.